Hey everyone, I'm Tassinix, and welcome to my first attempt at a Grand Arena Omicron tier list for Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It's November of 2024, and that always matters when you're making something like this because tier lists need to be updated often. They release characters on a frequent enough basis per quarter that within 3 to 6 months, this can get shaken up quite a bit. So I'm not usually making these, but there was a lot of interest. Many people requesting this on my Discord. And yeah, I mean, you know, at your request, I'm happy to make it. I'm usually making stuff that can last a bit longer and offer lasting value. But upon request, with sufficient interest, I can make stuff like this. So yeah, quick shout out to Dagger, who helped sit with me here and help me bounce my thoughts off, gave good feedback in how to necessarily rank all of these. By the way, when we're going over this list here, everything you're seeing is going from top down, left to right. So within the same tier, characters that are coming first or further to the left are higher priority, in my opinion, than those further off toward the right. So that being said, I wanted to just define how we broke down these categories here real quick. S tier is indispensable. This is must-see TV. Don't leave home without them. If you don't have them, get them. All right. A tier is transformative. These make a team capable of counters or resisting counters that were not otherwise possible. B tier are elevating. They make a mediocre team viable or competitive, possibly even as a punch-up, and they can also make good teams reach their full potential. C tier are okay. They offer decent value, or they're only situationally useful. And then D tier is poor. They're just rarely, if ever, useful. Now, all of this is coming from, my point of view in the top 100 of Kyber 1, usually within the top 50. So some of these characters have fallen into disuse for me. If you're at a point in the game where it's like, oh, Tass must be out of his mind because I'm still making tons of use out of my Shapeshifter Omicron for my Bounty Hunter team, don't let me tell you that you're wrong for where you're at. That's not the point of this. This is all things being equal. You had every option available. Let's say you're sitting in a big account and you could just lay everything out from scratch. That's what the thrust of where this is coming from. So let's start from the top here. In the S tier, the indispensable tier, you've got, and I have all these written down for just such an occasion, Rule of Two from Darth Bane, followed by Starkiller's There Is Much Conflict in You. Then you have Baylan Skoll's It's All Inevitable leadership, followed by Reva's lead, Harbored Aggression. Then you have Savaj's unique Brute, followed by Malgus's leadership, Legacy of Power. Darth Treya's unique is next, which is Lord of Betrayal. This is one of Malicos's uniques next, Echo of the Fallen Order. This is the one where, yeah, he's basically savior to his Ufu allies. It's amazing, among other things in that skill. Tied very closely at the hip with that is Seer's leadership, Rekindle. And then one of Jar Jar's uniques, Muy Muy, I Love You. This is the unique that, among other things, allows you to get extra stacks for your shield generator at the start of the battle per each 3 relic levels that you've applied to Jar Jar. So up to Relic 9, you can get benefits from that. And then last in the tier here is Darth Bane's Essence of Dominance. When I'm thinking about a character with multiple Omicrons, it's tempting to put the Omicrons together if they're all pretty good, but I would say Rule of Two is so much more widely generally applicable with any other Sith, Bane plus any Sith, than specifically also having Essence of Dominance. There are fights that Bane wants to take where he can't actually manipulate the cooldowns of his enemies and stuff like that. So the value of this one can be diminished, but nevertheless, it is one of the very best Omicrons in the game, because this plus Rule of Two allows you to take on significant teams up to and including Galactic Legends. All right, Into the A tier. Again, this is transformative. So the first one here is Loyal Bodyguard. This is the one that gives you the free Handmaiden decoy at the start of battle for your Queen Amidala team. Really a big deal. Denies a lot of teams the opportunity to work the team down when they get stuck on that free Handmaiden decoy. Next up is Force Dyad. This is for Ben Solo. This is the one that basically says you can't kill him until Leia is at half or less health, and you can't kill her until Ben is dead. So, kind of a big deal. All right, then next up is Way of the Mandalore, BKM's leadership. It's incredible. Among other things is, the Revive. I believe that's your free taunt for Paz Vizsla at battle start. Lots going on there. Then Balin's third ability, his second special, Power, such as you've never dreamed. This is AoE stun, and if they resist the stun, it's 100% turn meter reduction and AoE armor shred. A bunch of stuff in this. It's a crazy skill. Next up is Luthen's unique, Dreams with Ghosts. This is the essential Omicron that enables the punch-ups that Mon Mothma plus Luthen are able to do now. Mon Mothma plus Luthen's capable of fighting, I want to say, 6 of the Galactic Legends now. And, if you're inclined to put Luthen under Saw, okay, fine. This will certainly add to that. Okay. Next is Strength is Power. This is the other unique on Malicos. It's super powerful. You want to have it, but I'd lower it, I'd rate it lower than Echo of the Fallen Order. Next up, and I know this is kind of daring of me to do here, but we did take a stab at ranking the new Exile Ezra's abilities, his Omicrons. It's difficult to say how these really are going to be prioritized once we have Galactic Legend Ahsoka released. At this point in time, we don't have her kit. We don't know exactly what we can get away with mod-wise and Omicron-wise. So those rankings for him in particular, very tentative. But this is Daring Advance. This is his big damage skill. I'm sure most of us have seen some of that footage rolling around of seeing what the early damage of that ability can look like. It might be very impressive, but it's a super powerful skill regardless of whether or not it does a ton of damage. So, good one to have. Next up is, Big Boomas. Yeah, so this is your Plasma Disruption, among other things. This is a really powerful skill in Jar Jar's kit. And combined with one of his other Omicrons, he's going to frequently have his cooldowns reset. So this button can potentially be getting mashed a lot. It's powerful. Next up is Malevolent Whirlwind. This is Darth Bane's first special ability. That's the one where you get to dispel twice. You're doing extra damage per buff dispelled. Super great skill. Next is Force Repulse. This is Starkiller's AoE Dispel. You also do more damage per buff dispelled. One of the best reasons to take this skill is, AoE Dispel is very, very rare. Alright, next up is Reckless Sweep from Reva. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to rank this one, but the idea here is that if you set her to be last in the turn order, you're able to do stuff like just, pull everybody's cooldowns back up. If she's last in the turn order, all of them have used specials. Now you're bringing them back around that much sooner. It's pretty powerful. Okay, starting now into the B tier, which again was, elevating Omicrons. First is Saw's leadership. Freedom isn't free. You might think this one is like A tier. Why do I have it ranked so lowly? It's because Saw isn't always a meta defense. And I think that's where that team has shown that it can shine, is as a defense. But it isn't always good. Nevertheless, when it is good, it is really good. So, top of the B tier, right? Next up is Dr. Afra's leadership, Suspended Doctorate. Guys, you all know how much I love Dr. Afra, BT1000. These guys are monsters for me, and more seasons than not, I can take on whatever kind of Jabba I can find. Sometimes Lord Vader, Sith Eternal, other things. But It's also a team that is subject to the power spikes of Datacrons. At the time of this recording, there is a Datacron that favors Jabba, but there isn't one that really favors Afra, and right now I'm not really trying to pick that fight. So not good enough, not always good enough to be something like an A tier. Nevertheless, very high B. Next up is Zori's ability. There's more of us. So this is the unique that enables Finn Zori to do stuff like take on Galactic Legend Rey. It's a real punch-up. It's a big deal. Next is Marin's Last of the Night Sisters. Yeah, this Omicron is a big deal. Combined with very high relics and then tenacity sets with protection primaries, your Marin is capable of taking on a Jabba team. It's something that I need more practice on, but knowing that there's a lot of players out there that have a pretty consistent method of taking down most Jabbas throughout whatever Datacron meta with this. Pretty nice. Next up is Dash's Prepared for Anything. Yeah, so this is the one where he hands out Prepared to all Scoundrel allies at battle start whenever they respawn. It's a crazy combo with Vandor Chewbacca, and I rate it fairly highly in B in the sense that just like Zori and Marin, you can use Dash for Galactic Legend counter, specifically JML, but there are situations where he can perform better. Right now, we do have a Mercenary Datacron set out, so I imagine there's a lot of people experimenting with Dash, and I feel like he's right about there, in the top of the middle of the pack. Next up is Radiss's Rebel Assault Omicron. So this is what enables him to be a serious team in Grand Arena at all. This team really doesn't exist in Grand Arena, save for that Omicron. So if you want to be able to use him to destroy DTMGs or people setting, I don't know, there's a variety of things you can overpower. In certain metas, you can take down Tuskens in 3 vs 3, stuff like that. He can be situationally very powerful. Next up is Exile Ezra's unique Exile. This offers mastery and speed at the battle start to the exiled guy that will be Ezra, and then when he loses it later, so when he gains it and when he loses it, there will be mastery and speed for him. And then when another ally is gaining Exile, they're going to gain some of those benefits as well. So pretty cool. Next is Cornered Beast for Wampa. I mean, we all know that there are times when Wampa is an apex predator, able to take down stuff like Gas, depending on the meta, Sith Eternal teams. But what the purpose of this Omicron has really become over time is the floor of Grand Arena. Whether it's 3 vs 3 or 5 vs 5, something in the back of every competitive player's mind is, I don't want to set Wampa food. That's the minimum. You don't want to set something where they can just feasibly walk on in and take it down with Wampa, because when it works, you're usually only losing that protection banner on Wampa. So it's like one banner gone, and it's a underbanned kill. Very powerful. Okay, next is Ezra's first special. That's Kanan's Legacy. This is the one that's going to give a backup plan and what else? I forget. There's a lot baked into that one. Yeah, the 25 stacks of Purgil migration. So that's going to take you halfway to dropping your exile. That's a lot. That is a lot. In addition to the backup plan for everyone, which is pretty busted, in my opinion. Okay, next, one of my very favorite abilities in the game, Die, Whelp. This is Malicos's rock special, aka whoop, 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 whoop. Just chucking rocks at people, enormous damage, stacking critical damage, extra true damage, healing immunity. Like, it's a monster of a skill, and when you talk about an ability that raises a character to its maximum heights, that's one of them. Next up is Ben Solo's Obscured. This is the turn meter reduction and buff infliction one. It's a decent skill. It's decent. And it's situationally useful. You know, not a lot really to say about that one, though. Next one is I Am Queen Amidala. Yeah, that is the first special off of Queen. And I honestly forgot one of the main benefits of it. So let me refresh myself here as well. But yeah, this attack ignores enemy protection, and all allies gain crit damage up and 4 stacks of heal over time and protection over time for 2 turns. All enemies are inflicted with a stack of damage over time for each active Galactic Republic ally, speed down and vulnerable for 2 turns, and have their cooldowns increased by 1, which can't be resisted. If there is an active Handmaiden decoy, these effects can't be evaded. So yeah, there was no way I was going to remember this off the top of my head, but this one clearly deserves reading out because holy crap does that do a lot for the drop-on of 1 Omicron. Okay. All right, next up is one of Balin's uniques. What one is that? Master and Apprentice. This is the one that gives him extra for stacking his Soldier of Fortune. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Next after that is for Mandalore. This is the Ignore Taunt Omicron for Bo-Katan Mandalore. It's pretty good, again. Next up, this is from Luthen's kit, and that is What Do I Sacrifice? Yeah, that one I want to say is like an offensive buff up. We'll pull that up here. We don't have to take it on faith. I can read it as soon as I find it. There we go. So, yeah, all allies gain critical damage up for 2 turns. Mon Mothma and all other Rebel Fighter allies gain 30% offense stacking and are immune to turn meter reduction until the end of their next turn. Target Rebel Fighter ally ignores taunt until the end of the next turn. So yeah, in particular for offensive applications with Mon Mothma, this is a really decisive ability, right? You're putting this on your heaviest attacker that you're then able to ignore their taunt and just put the moves on a priority target. So, strong skill. All right, next after that is Iden, exactly as planned. This is what turns his team from something that is just completely unworthy from using in Grand Arena to a serious competitor. It punishes out-of-turn attackers, so you know things like CLS greatly struggle. Anything where out-of-turn attacks are required, because this is going to restore health and protection. It is what enables this team to do good things in Grand Arena. All right. Next after that is Let None Pass. This is Morgan Elsbeth's ability, and it's actually a pretty good one. I'll pull it up here real quick. It does a lot, but not a lot that it, not so much that it deserves to be ranked higher. Stagger target enemy for 2 turns and expose all enemies and then inflict them with buff immunity for 2 turns. These can all be resisted. You're not normally stacking a ton of potency on her, so if target enemy is inflicted with defense down, odds are they are. Night Sister allies deal an additional 5% damage, and the cooldown of their abilities is decreased by 1. That's actually pretty dope. All Night Sister allies gain Frenzy for 1 turn, and protection up 50% for 2 turns. Very nice stuff. The protection up is not usually something you care a ton about, but for a team that doesn't get any revives, 1 life to live is everything. All right, who's next after that? Hey, it's Qui-Gon Jinn's agility training. Yeah, this is what makes him go here in Grand Arena. It forbids you from killing any of his Jedi allies until you've dealt with him, unless, of course, you've decided to take a Galactic Legend into the fight. So you either have to have a clever or reasonable counter reserved to deal with this team, or you just overpower it with a Galactic Legend. Not bad, it demands a decent bit out of you. Right after that is Hondo Naka's Omicron. That's just good business. This is what allows him to have a whole bunch of turn meter at battle start and get that train moving for starting his ransom stacking. This is, I love Hondo Naka as a character, but, and right now, he even has a Datacron and stuff, so his stock is at a relative high point right now. But this character has proven over the life of its time here in Grand Arena that it's only situationally great. There's plenty of reasonable counters to it, and it has the opportunity to shine, but only every once in a while, and only in certain circumstances. Last here in the tier is Luthen's basic, Tools of My Enemy. Yeah, when used on his turn, I want to say it's stacking up his speed and also lowering enemy defense, something like that. I don't want to misspeak, so let me get your boy here. Yeah, he gains a 25 speed, and the target enemy has their defense reduced by 30% until the next time Luthen uses his basic ability or until he's defeated. So there are a decent number of players that are strategically choosing to use his basic on turn 1, get these benefits, and then do all this other stuff, because he'll have another 2 turns using specials before he has to use his basic again, which means that a priority target is operating with 30% reduced defense the whole time. It's pretty good. Okay, so that covers B tier. Now we're into the C tier. These, again, are the okay tier of Omicrons. First up is Inevitable End on Night Trooper. This is 100% max health, some speed, some potency. Great stuff for this team. Love it on the guy. I consider it to be like the top of the okay ones, because it's adding a lot into that attacker. Still, it's so-so considering all the ones above it. Next up in the list is Captain Rex's The Lost Commander. This is controversial. I had a lot of pushback on this when I first shared this infographic with folks, because they said, Taz, how could you rate Captain Rex so low? It's like, well, first of all, there's only that first clause of his Omicron that works full-time for you, okay? Where do I got my man? He doesn't count as like this. Okay, let's go ahead and pull him up, because this one I know people have questions about. So this part is always active. While in Grand Arenas, Rex gains 30% critical damage and an additional 60% max health and 25 speed. The next part is conditional. While in 5 vs 5 Grand Arenas, and all allies are Phoenix at the start of battle. Whenever an ally is inflicted with ability block or daze, they dispel it and inflict 2 stacks of damage over time on all enemies for 3 turns, which can't be evaded or resisted. Whenever Captain Rex uses his basic ability, he recovers 10% health and protection. So, in 5 vs 5 here, we're often seeing Captain Rex used with Leia, Galactic Legend Leia. Also seeing him used with Mon Mothma teams, Saw teams, stuff like that. All right, so where you're not using him in Phoenix, this big chunk of stuff just doesn't work in 5s. Now in 3 vs 3, it says, while in 3 vs 3 Grand Arenas, and all allies are clone troopers at the start of battle. Whenever an ally assists, they have a 50% chance to dispel all buffs on the target enemy, and they inflict armor shred until the end of the encounter, which can't be evaded or resisted. This is really strong. In particular, if you're in a part of the game where Rex, 501st Rex, Captain Rex, and then 501st Fives, the Fives character, those 3 clones had been a staple defense with this Omicron for quite a few seasons. It's a very powerful team, fast-moving, dangerous stuff. But it's not competitive at the top of the game anymore, because you can do stuff like solo Darth Malik against it and stuff like that. So solo Malgus, a bunch of different easy trades for opponents to take on this on that particular composition. So that being said, I'm seeing him sometimes run with like Saw, Luthen, Captain Rex, something like that. Might even see him with Galactic Legend Leia in 3 vs 3. In any of these cases, that this clause for being with clone trooper allies is inactive. So this first line is really the only thing that you get full time, and that's why I say it's so-so. If you are always running this guy with Phoenix in 5 vs 5 and always with clones in 3 vs 3, and you're finding that it does what you want it to do, you're pleased with how it's performing on either offense or defense, great. Otherwise, I think it's fine, just where he is. Next after this one, It's a favorite of mine in 3 versus 3. Strength in numbers. This is Tusken Raiders unique, and it was the very first 3 versus 3 Omicron I ever applied. It took me a while to think about whether or not it was worth it, but let me tell you, no regrets. Years into owning that Omicron, Tuskens have virtually always been on defense for me. The only times they weren't is when there was really a punch-up opportunity on offense, depending on the datacrons available at the time, or I just saw an opponent that had something pretty smooth, pretty easy, pretty cost-effective worked out to deal with my Tuskens, and I just didn't feel like offering that. But if you are generally averse to 3 versus 3 Omicrons, I hear you. If you absolutely never picked up another but this one for Tusken Raider, I think you would be okay. All right. Now, all that said, immediately after this are 2 more 3 versus 3 Omicrons for our murder droids, 000 and BT1. Those skills are specialized in torture for 000 and homicidal counterpart for BT1. So, yeah, the 000 one is, I think, a little better than BT1. It is the one where you're going to have your torture cooldown refresh. Let's take a look at that real quick. Torture lasts for 2 turns instead of 1, first of all. Very nice. And if BT1 is an active ally, BT1 and 000 recover 20% health and protection. If this ability defeats an enemy, all dark side allies gain 10% offense, stacking for the rest of the encounter, doubled for dark side droids. So, from my point of view, doubling the length of torture itself is something where I would consider this a possible buy, just for that clause alone. The restoration and the offense stacking, really, really nice. Note that to get that offense stacking, you need to actually defeat the enemy with this ability, okay? And I was thinking that it had a reset, but I think the reset might come from BT1, and we'll check that out real quick. Whenever BT1 or 000 defeat an enemy, their cooldowns are refreshed, and they gain 30% turn meter. So it's nice when you get a kill, and it's not going to make you win something you weren't already going to win, so I would consider this one of those win harder Omicrons, and that's why it's ranked, accordingly. Okay, so after these, this is Dr. Afra's Droid Savant, and this Omicron is, like our last few, only active in one mode of Grand Arena. It's only for 5 versus 5. So while it is actually very powerful, it's something that you could conceivably pick up later. It's good to have, though, in 5s. I'm not going to lie to you about that. It's very significant when you're taking on the full Jabba team. All right, next up after this one is My Place is with My People. This is Queen Amidala's leadership Omicron, and it just hands out some buffs based on your ally's character role type. It's okay. It's okay. It's not game breaking, but it's okay. Next up is Boundless Force Throw on Starkiller. So this is the one that sets down all those debuffs on a single target, does unavoidable, unresistible debuffs, and then a big chunk of damage besides. So when you're using Starkiller versus Rey, classically, there's often an RJT on the team, and if she gets inspired, she's able to start stacking evasion, and it's very possible that you can time out on her because all of your attacks are being evaded. This is one of the only ways that you can, reduce your risk of failure on that, because this attack cannot be evaded at all, and it hits hard, and it keeps a locked healing immunity on them, so the enemy's really not going to have a chance to restore while you're trying to circle around to using this ability again to finish off that lone character. Next up is Darth Talon's Sith Cruelty. This is fairly unnecessary. It's kind of it's a win harder with Traya. There's still some opportunities where I think that the benefits of running this Omicron in like 5 versus 5 with your full Traya team can really elevate Traya to do a couple extra little tricks, but not a ton. Not a ton. All right. Next up is Rogue Archaeology. Yeah, this is another 5 versus 5 only skill but it does a lot of extra damage based on your potency. It's inflicting additional debuffs. It's a nice customer to have. I like it. It's one of the ones I picked up both that one and the Droid Savant unique at the same time, but definitely after the leadership. Next up is Stap with his Omicron single trooper aerial platform. This is the Omicron that elevates General Grievous from being basically Mon Mothma or Bad Batch food into something that is, when the Datacron meta favors it, capable of taking on something like Galactic Legend Leia. This Omicron actually makes your Grievous team a serious threat, and you might find alternative uses for it. I know that fairly reliably now it can be used to just stomp out things like Omicron Qui-Gon Jinn, Galactic Republic Jedi team. So pretty good stuff there. Next up is Chrysanthemum's Champion of the Fighting Pits. It makes him bigger, nastier, immune to a couple different debuff types. It's nice to have. This is what I mean in C tier by decent value. It's decent. It's decent. Probably not higher priority than any number of these other ones above it, but it's decent. Okay. Next up is Misa Okide. Yeah, this is one of Jar Jar's ones, and honestly, I can't. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to say I remember off the top of my head what this one's all about. But that's okay. I'll read it off here. So, whenever the shield generator uses Plasma Pulse, reset all of Jar Jar's cooldowns. Whenever a Gungan ally is dazed, staggered, or stunned, they dispel it and gain shield up for 2 turns. So that second clause is more significant than you might give it credit for. But yes, whenever the shield generator uses Plasma Pulse, reset all of Jar Jar's cooldowns. So this is what I'm saying between this unique and then the Big Booma's Omicron. This, they feed into each other, and he'll be able to cast this ability more often. It's nice. Whenever this ability is used, reduce the cooldown of all other Gungan ally abilities by 1. So it's kind of like a mini Reva effect from her one special baked into there. It's good stuff. Okay, who do we got next on the list? Yeah, that is Drogon's second in command. So when he has a Rebel Fighter tank leader, that's like Galactic Legend Leia, and I want to say Saw? I think Saw might be support, actually. But the idea here is that he's immune to ability block when he has that Rebel Fighter tank leadership. And then in all cases, he has plus 50% max health. So big deal for this attacker. He's usually under a leadership where there's some max health stacking going on to a significant degree. So good one. Next up is Shapeshifter with Zam Wessel. So I love this Omicron because even in the modern day, when people are setting like their full gas 501st in 5 vs 5 Grand Arena, I can use my Bounty Hunters team with Sam and successfully outrun them and take on that gas team. There are some Datacron metas where you can't get away with it, but in general, this has been a very reliable counter to me. Still, that's mostly where I see her getting used for me. Maybe occasionally if I'm doing some kind of risky or gutsy Lord Vader counter, but that's much less frequent than this other use against gas. So if you're finding, again, if you're finding that this one performs very frequently for you and you're always using it, okay, I respect that. But compared to the whole number of Omicrons you could get, it just isn't what it used to be. Speaking of which, that brings us to Rose's Omicron, Valiant Spirit. This is very nice, especially in conjunction with Zori. It's a good skill, but again, it's not what it really used to. All other resistance allies also gain 10% offense for each exposed enemy, and they gain 5% turn meter whenever a resistance ally scores a critical hit. Paired with the Zori Omicron, this is much, much better. But in and of itself, it's okay. It's okay. Zori's really needed to make this thing sing, and you could say that this one does elevate the Zori team, assuming that you have Zori's Omicron applied. So that's the thing, is it's like, I rate this one fairly low because Finzori isn't always a good team on defense or on offense, depending on the Datacron meta. And when it is, when you are wanting Rose, you're only wanting Rose if you have the Omicron on Zori. So that's why I rate this one lower. She has another Omicron's dependency to be really worth considering at all. Okay, next on the list we have BKM's Reinforcements Have Arrived. So this is the special on BKM that allows her to set up that 1-2 punch with BAM. If you have your BAM modded to be just ahead of BKM, he'll go into his disciplined setup stance. Then she's going to do this ability that calls all Mandalorian allies to mass assist. And if she happened to have a Mandalorian ally that couldn't assist, that Mandalorian ally gets a bonus turn. So you effectively force feed 20 birds into BAM, who wasn't able to act, who now gets a bonus turn, who immediately gets to follow up from BKM using this ability with launching his birds. This is usually part of your 1-2 punch for using BKM versus Lord Vader. All right. After this one is the unique from Malgus, Darth Malgus, Korriban's Legacy. This is the one that says when doubt gets dispelled, a couple more doubts go out. This is only having value in 5 versus 5. It literally does nothing in 3 versus 3. So pretty poor on the list. After this one is one of Ben Solo's uniques, Redeemed. This is the one that says his attacks ignore protection. You'd say, oh wow, why isn't that always useful? It depends. There was a point in the game where folks were getting jammed up using their Ben Solo versus Gas, because Gas says that you can't strike at my health so long as I have protection, and your Ben Solo wasn't able to hit at the protection on Gas. So you did no damage, really, to Gas. You needed your other allies to beat down his protection before anything you did mattered, and then you would have to race to knock down his side so that you could quickly clean him up after. It wasn't always advantageous to be able to ignore protection. That's really not much of a case these days. It's an okay value to add the ability to ignore protection on that character, but not priority. After that is Reva's unique, Driven by Revenge. So this is the one that I want to say gives her extra offense when she revives and the ability to ignore taunt. Making her punchy is nice. Her doing more damage when she gets the opportunity to do so is nice. I would not say it's mission critical, and I don't think it was going to win you any fights that you were otherwise going to lose. Last, in the C tier, is Malgus's first special, Deprived Senses. This is another one of those win harder. It's extra true damage. I want to say some more debuffs. We can check it real quick. Debuffs inflicted by this ability can't be resisted, and Sith Empire allies gain crit chance up for 2 turns. If the target was already shocked, deal true damage to all other enemies, and Darth Malgus gains 50% turn meter. It's a lot of text, but it adds up to being, it's okay. It's okay. It adds a decent value, and hence here it is at C tier. But this is not going to help you win something that I think you weren't already going to win. All right, and that wraps up the C tier. Now we go into the D tier, the true bottom of the barrel. First up is a pair that are really tied at the hip for the most part, I would say. Admiral Akbar's Rebel Coordination Leadership, and then Princess Leia's Against All Odds unique. This team is ancient. These characters are from the dawn of the game. And with their Omicrons, with certain Datacrons, and having considered other Rebel allies to make the most of it, sometimes including like your Han and other expensive characters, you can make this team into a real threat. But it's very rare. You need certain Datacron metas, and you need the meta at the time to also not be full of extra counters that might gobble this team up, because this team would be about taking an absurd number of turns due to crazy unhinged turn meter gain. That's kind of what that pair does together. And it's powerful when it works, but it's so rarely good that I think it's a very poor investment of 2 Omicrons. If you have pretty much everything above this done, and if you got 2 Omicrons burning a hole in your pocket and you want to be able to experiment, you want to have the option, go ahead and do both of these. But otherwise, you can safely hold off. You might just as well wait for new characters. Now, we'll talk about Chief Chirpa. There are times when Ewoks have been dangerous here. When we got Princess Nisa, we saw that she added a lot to the team. It makes it considerably more dangerous, but it's still feeling like a middling team. And then when you think about Datacrons being figured into the mix, it's just not that competitive, man. It gets gamed too easily these days by other teams. So it's just not good enough, I think. Next up is First Order TIE Pilots Keen Eye. This was one of my very first Omicrons, I want to say. That and like Qui-Gon Jinn's agility training. Among my very first Omicrons, this, when it was fresh, was a really solid choice. You got to have a slacker team that was worth a damn, and then a separate First Order team that was useful as an offense or serviceable as a defense. That's really no longer the case. The game has added so many more teams since then that it's just been outclassed. So it's not that it's terrible in and of itself, it's just not competitive anymore, and probably not worth your Omicron at this point in time. Next up is Tusken Chieftain's Nomadic People. So this is what offers synergy for you having Boba Fett, Scion of Jango, along in 3 versus 3. The problem here is that it's not that it's bad in itself, it's that it's worse than having Tusken Warrior and Tusken Raider with Tusken Raider's Omicron applied. Like, Tusken Warrior adds so much more threat into that team than Boba Fett, Scion of Jango. And so I would say that this is something that I don't know anybody that has sunk that Omicron that I've ever seen them run Dab Bob Boba on defense. I think they did it because they just didn't have anything else, commanding their attention, and they had the Omicron burning in their pocket. But this is one of the most sus Omicrons out there. You want to believe that it's situationally useful. I haven't seen it even be that. All right. Next up is Director Krennic's Immeasurable Power. It looks good on paper, but again, the game has moved beyond a kit as old as his to the point where even him with his Omicron on that ability is less than just the base skill of so many newer modern characters. He doesn't really apply any kind of real threat in the modern game. And what's disappointing is not too long ago there was a Datacron set where he got a level 9 and I was like, ooh, this might be the time to make this work. There might be something in here. And I sunk the Omicron on him, and damn if I didn't use him but once or twice the entire life of that Datacron set just because I really couldn't find the spot to squeeze him in. So, yeah. Last but never least, this should come as no surprise, is Luminara Unduli's Master Healer's Blessing. This is the duddiest dud. It wants to be on a Galactic Legend Jedi team that does not put up its own protection over time, or protection up. It doesn't want allies that can put up protection up. Otherwise, the effects are lost from this Omicron. So it's been one of the most disappointing Omicrons ever, because there's really no Jedi team where you don't actually make the team weaker by putting her on. You're putting her on for this Omicron, which is going to be shut off by most compositions, most of the fight. And so you could just put someone else there. Somebody who doesn't even have an Omicron. Just another mediocre Jedi, and you'll get more full-time benefit out of that than part-time benefit out of this. So that about wraps that up. That covers our list, and yeah, we've gone from top to bottom. I've definitely had to check this over a few times, make sure I didn't miss a few Omicrons. Some of the earlier edits of this that I shared on Discord were not accurate, but I will be posting this on my Discord, so that you can get this image. Of course, if you're watching the video, you can screen cap it and save that down. But thank you so much for sticking around and watching this. If you've liked this video, please do give it a like and hit subscribe to see more from my channel. Of course, you know where to find me. When I stream live, that's on twitch.tv/Tassinix. All of my previous VODs and a whole bunch of other Slugger-related content right here on the Tassinix Gaming YouTube. And until next time, it's been real, it's been awesome, it's been real awesome. Take care.